He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
Happy January the 6th to those who celebrate. This is The Alex Marlow Show. Thanks for joining me. It was pretty cool. I noticed that we were trending on iTunes or the Apple Podcasts, or on the Apple Podcast news charts, which I had not seen that before, which is very cool. So it's good. So one of the biggest news podcasts on Apple already, just 2 months in, and 2 months today, by the way, and going strong. The show's going to get bigger and better. It's going to be a huge year. Hope all of you had a great weekend. Mine was okay. A lot of work the entire time, which is rare. You would think as editor-in-chief of Breitbart that would come up, that I would have weekends where I work the whole weekend. But I do use my children as an excuse because they're not going to parent themselves, although a couple of them probably would like the opportunity. But I did do the 24/7 work cycle over the weekend, and you really riding the waves, because I think about all my blessings in life, and then I think about how I don't get to enjoy any of them this weekend because I got to get stuff done. But it was okay. It was okay until at about 1:30 in the morning yesterday, I wandered downstairs after a really productive work session, and it just smelled in my kitchen like someone was making cheese. Like they're just trying to make some fresh cheese or something in the kitchen. And I couldn't figure out what was going on until I realized that someone was kind of making fresh cheese. It was an aging chocolate milk. It's not like a wine or a bourbon or something. It doesn't age well, the chocolate milk, and it somehow exploded into it's something that you'd have to smell it to fully appreciate how awful the situation was. And I thought, this is the last straw. And then now here I am, smiling and excited to be at work, because it's a huge news day. By the way, Justin Trudeau has just resigned or announced his resignation. In Canada, this is something that we saw coming, but it's still a big deal. He's really had a hard go of it. He's been prime minister for about 10 years, and he seems like he's barely dodged scandal after scandal. He thinks of himself as a fighter. And like so many other countries, you gotta take. If you're going to take Vienna, I think, as a famous, is that Napoleon that said that? Anyway, Bannon used to say it all the time. And it's one of these things where no one ever took Vienna from Trudeau. So he was just kind of in there, hanging out, surviving scandal after scandal, blackface scandal, corruption scandal, terrible governance, all that stuff. But he's gone. He's on the way out now. And I asked my team at Breitbart what they really thought was the last straw. And they said first and foremost was immigration. It wasn't the blackface stuff. The issue was mainly that there was the fact of the matter is that illegal immigration had they lost control over it in the country, and that was also going to put them in a very bad position on their back foot when it came to negotiating with Trump, because Trump was very negative on that because it affects the United States of America, because a lot of interconnectivity there. And also the healthcare system was not working. The fact is that they have their socialized healthcare, but it was not giving adequate care or any care at all to a lot of people. And that was something that is one of the untold stories. I think we on the right, we tend to latch on the immigration narrative more. But they were deeply dissatisfied with his handling of healthcare and immigration. I was poking around to see, like, do people care about, I don't know, all the house arrests and the overdoing it on the coronavirus? Remember all those trucker protests? And I'm getting the impression that was not really the reason. It was really more the immigration and as well as the healthcare. And the conservatives are getting much tougher. They're very establishment, very Paul Ryan-y, so to speak, for a long time. But with Pierre Poilievre kind of finding his footing, the very charismatic guy, often seen eating an apple while debating liberals, it seemed to be pretty clear that the conservatives actually had a vision that they wanted to implement. And I think it could be a good one. It's not going to be a radical one. I don't think that it's going to be I don't think it's going to be too out of the norm where it'll make Canada uncomfortable, but I think it could be a nice conservative government that comes in. We're going to have to wait all the way till March for all the dust to settle, but this is very exciting news. And I will say another soft scalp for President Trump. Is that an expression, soft scalp? I think I'm making that up. But recall the German government collapsed right away after Trump won. And I think this is another example of liberals, left-wingers, a lot of them losing their mojo to deal with Trump, a lot of them not wanting to stand up to him, seeing his mandate, seeing that he was put back in despite all the things that were thrown at him. And seeing that as it's time to just pass it off and see if the conservatives can do a good job. And so I think that's great. I think that the coalition that Trudeau had was crumbling, but I think the combination of Trump and Poilievre's, the role he's been on in media of late, I think it made it clear that Canada is ready to try something else. So I know we got some Canadian listeners out there. I would love to get your takes. Email me aloha@alexmarlow.com. I'll read some of them on the air. But it's very exciting. So the Liberals are going to have to pick a new leader. Parliament's going to have to deal with a bunch of stuff. So it'll be a bit, but this is great news. Aside from Trudeau is one of my characters, and I always miss my characters when they go away. You guys know how I think of the front page of Breitbart.com. I think of it as I have some people who they think of themselves as real life, but for me, I think of them quite often as just people who are here for my amusement, because sometimes the appearances they keep up are actually more essential than the truth of their horrible governance. I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek because they make a lot of people's lives miserable. But the silver lining is we do get these interesting people to track. One other Canada thing, which is interesting, is that the Bourbon Street jihadist, Jabbar, he traveled to Cairo, Egypt, which is known as the global headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood radical group. But he also traveled multiple times to Canada. And he was there, I guess, as part of his radicalization process, which is kind of scary. Ontario specifically. So anyone from Ontario in the audience, tell them what's going on up there, because I was aware that there were some Muslim strongholds in Canada developing, but I had no idea that might be a place that would be on your hit list if you're potentially warming up to mowing down a bunch of revelers on Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve, if that's where you were going to. So the FBI became aware of this, I guess, after the fact. It also speaks to how the FBI did not do their job ahead of time. I'm not saying it's easy to find these guys or needles in haystacks, but that is the job. And so I don't want to be overly sympathetic when people fail at doing the one job they're supposed to have, which is, get intel to keep us safe, and they didn't do that. He also had these devices that were unique, according to the FBI, that we had not seen this before, and that also makes you think that he had not acted alone. He'd acted in coordination with some people, and we're not learning who they are. We know he's inspired by ISIS, but we don't know anything about who connected with him, who was behind it. Not good, and a big indictment of our system. And I hope to God that people don't see this failure by the U.S. government, that this had happened, that as an invitation that we're becoming a softer target. And again, 2 weeks away, January the 20th, I could not get here fast enough. Misty, this is the perfect spot to tack in that plug for going to the president's inauguration. This is the spot. I'm going to give a pregnant pause. January 20th is the day, and Washington, D.C. is the place. That's when and where Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. He gets a whole new inauguration. It was already 45th. Now it'll be 47. And we want to send you there. You can win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP experience to attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C. It includes airfare for you and a guest to Washington, a 3-night stay in our nation's capital, tickets for the presidential inauguration, and much more. Don't miss this historic opportunity to celebrate the greatness, the history, the excitement of a presidential inauguration. To enter, you see the link in the show notes for this episode, or go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. Guys, I've said that this is the marquee event on anyone's social calendar for the year, really for the decade for most people. And you get a chance to go. I don't see why you wouldn't give it a shot. SalemPodcastNetwork/Trump. All you got to do, and you'll get your name on the list. And let's see if you can win. I hope you do. All right, that's what we had to get that ad read in right there. It's perfect. Too perfect, the segues. Another thing interesting with the New Orleans attack is that he was wearing Mark Zuckerberg's Meta smart glasses. So the AI people are trying to get glasses so that we have this hybrid situation where reality and virtual reality become one and the same. Google's been trying this for a long time with their Google Glass, whatever it's called. So they got these Meta smart glasses now. So this is where theoretically we're going to be walking around with these glasses on, and we're going to be swiping, and I'm moving my hands and I'm gesticulating in a silly way. Those of you who are just listening to the show, and it is all designed to create some level of technology to go straight into our brain as soon as they can, until it's just interpreting our thoughts. And I think that's where they see the future. Combine that with AI. Musk is putting the chips in our brain, which is, I mean, there's a lot of science to it. There really is. It's grotesque in some ways. It's in its nascent stages, but it just does make a lot of sense that this is going to happen. So Meta confirmed that, had confirmed this, I guess. They have a partnership with Ray-Ban. Creepy privacy implications, we wrote at Breitbart News. Yeah, no kidding. So they can stream anything. I'll leave that there for now, but that's not a great development, because the technology, what is it? Is it going to be used for good, or is it going to be used for evil? And we've seen this with social media. Social media I was on it earlier today. People use it. It's got purposes. It's good for getting the word out, good for getting news out. But on net, how is social media doing for us? Doing very, very poorly. We have huge mental health crises. We're very distracted. And it's been a net negative in society. I would submit that unequivocally. And when the technology is happening, it gets very exciting to watch it happen. So, let's see, January the 6th today. This is the day the Electoral College certifies the election results. And we've got a sort of remarkable situation that I was excited about. I had a feeling it was going to turn into not very dramatic, and I think that I'm looking good in that regard. It's not going to end up being that big of a dramatic switch for the country, because the Democrats, I think, are better off just acting like they're the ones who believe in a peaceful transition of power, which they don't, as you know. They always deny the 2016 election. Stacey Abrams denied her Georgia election where she lost governorship. So they're willing to object to elections. They're willing to pretend as though elections results don't matter. And they're willing to sustain that for years on end. But in this case, it was just so overwhelming with Trump, where he won the popular vote. He won a huge mandate in the Electoral College. And they're much better off just picking up the pieces. They're rudderless. They don't have any big arguments. They had almost no credible lawsuits that they could wage. Remember, Mark Elias tried to drag out that Senate race in Pennsylvania. That was the exception that proved the rule. They had hundreds and hundreds of attorneys ready to file lawsuits anywhere, and they really didn't have many that were legit, that they could even try to pull the wool over eyes. They couldn't do it. So January the 6th came up, certification time. And so the question was going to be, were the Democrats going to use what I believe was common sense and try to make it so that we do the peaceful transition of power, that tradition in this country, or were they going to try to put up some sort of a stink to pander their base and try to get those donation dollars from the MSNBC crowd, who'd been told that Trump is an existential threat and he needs to be stopped by any means necessary? So I had a feeling it was going to net out with some peace, and that's pretty much what we got, because we got Kamala Harris certifying the election. Here, let me roll this.
As delivered to the President of the Senate is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
Wow, she got more applause. Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Oh, beautiful thing. Great to witness. Congratulations, guys. Take it in. We did it. We did it. We did it, guys. We did it. You know what this reminds me of? What was that year? I think it was 2016, I want to say, where those golf fans are going to know what I'm talking about here. Jordan Spieth was a golfer, won the Masters, and he was winning by a lot going into the Masters back 9 on Sunday the following year. I think he won 2015, and I think this was 2016 when this happened, and he looked like he was going to win again. He was coasting, and then he took like a like an 8 on the par 3 12th and completely collapsed and did not win. So the tradition with the Masters is that if you won the previous year, you have to present the green jacket, which is the trophy for the championship, to the person who won this year. So Spieth was going to win back-to-back and said not only did he lose, he then had to present the green jacket to this guy, Danny Willett, who had just been handed the tournament by Spieth's collapse. So not only did he have to lose, and he had to suffer this indignity where he had to go and give the trophy to the other guy. That's what's going on here, is that Harris had to pass off and she had to give the green jacket over to, as vice president, pass it over to Trump. So very cool. And we earned it. We deserved it. And smooth, peaceful transition of power. We're better off. We're better off that way. It would have been exciting if they put up more of a stink, but I can't say I was rooting for it because I would rather talk about the policy. I'd rather talk about the agenda because that's where we're at here. We need to get the agenda through. More on that momentarily. But Biden did use January the 6th to smear Trump. He put out an op-ed in the Washington Post. I don't even need to go through it, but he's doing a legacy building right now. But remember that Biden ran on this concept of restoring decency, humility, honor to the White House. And all he's done is acted like a total jerk the whole time. He's been the most divisive president imaginable. And he's had a lot of divisive presidents who preceded him, Barack Obama being one of them. But he's just an angry, bitter guy who has no legacy to beyond that he'll just be the interim guy between the Trumps. And he wanted to pass off the reins to someone. He's got no one. He can't pass it. He can't pass it to Harris. He can't pass it to his crackhead son. Here, we got a clip. Let's play Biden.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
That's him over the weekend. He knows more world leaders than any one of you know. Okay, he's been in charge of the country for 50 years. He's currently president. And this is how he heckles journalists. Here we go. One more time.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
He knows more world leaders than any journalist. That is awesome. That is so impressive. He really does pride himself in knowing world leaders. It's one of his favorite things. It's what a just upstanding Catholic citizen, Big Joey the Biden. He still continues to act as president, though. The Trump is really the president now narratives were so far off. Look, guys, I'm going to try to give you things on the show. I'm going to call balls and strikes. I really am. I will give you my politics. Committed, America first, conservative, populist, nationalist, anti-establishment, all that stuff. But I will tell you when we are latching onto narratives that are just not necessarily true. And one of them is that Biden wasn't president and he's not president now. He's banning offshore oil and gas drilling in most federal waters. We talked about this a little bit last week, cemented this over the weekend. He's quietly banning most gas-powered tankless water heaters. Another thing that took place, this was, I think it was about the Christmas week. And we can go through it. Washington Free Beacon had a big report on it. And he's out there saying, attacking reporters, distracting us with his demented mind. Obviously, he's slower than he even was before, saying stuff like that. He's losing it. He gave California an EPA waiver, special EPA waiver. This is a Politico report from Friday. Moved through some of Biden's last attempts to safeguard California's progressive climate policies from Donald Trump, granting special Environmental Protection Agency waivers to impose higher emission standards for lawnmowers, leaf blowers, and refrigerated trucks, as well as off-road vehicles. I will tell you, doing the show from my house, which I've mostly been able to create a pretty nice studio environment. So way too many lawnmowers and leaf blowers going on in the background. So I'm cool with it. Leaf blowers are kind of awful, right? Like you just like shooting rat turds up in the air into people's noses. Is the maybe we just pay people a little more, let them use the rake. So I don't know. Maybe I can get behind that. But you know, we need lawnmowers. So I'm pro lawnmower. I'm mixed to negative on leaf blowers. How about that? There's a hot take for you. Grab that one. Share that one on social. Biden gave out presidential medals of freedom, which made a mockery of this country. And I point this out because this is our highest civilian honor, and Biden has reduced it to trolling. And when I give you some of the names that Biden is using, then the type of people who are out there, it is just so important to comprehend just how he's wielding his power in the last days of his administration. Let's go through this. Jose Andres, renowned Spanish-American culinary innovator. And this is a guy who is a Spanish person. Maybe he's American citizenship, but I certainly don't think of him as an American. He certainly identifies as a Spanish person. And he makes amazing food. I will say that. His restaurants, I've been to many of them. They're pretty incredible. I got to say, look, you give the devil its due in the show. I'm not going to lie to you. But he's really made his notoriety less for his cooking well and more for being a huge activist for left-wing causes, even pro-Hamas causes as of late. So he acts as though he's providing large-scale relief, but it's all politically oriented, and he's a big left-wing activist. Bono from U2. Bono gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I have to say Bono deserves it because he seemed to stop making music, and I'm really happy about that. So he definitely deserves an award for putting us out of our misery. I'm kidding. U2's got a good song or two, maybe. I don't know. They got a couple okay songs, right? I just never understood his pomposity. He was one of those guys, one of the original rock stars, to act like because he is a rock star, he's the greatest guy who ever lived. It's a real phenomenon, and I'm not that into it. See, I'm bothered by people who are smug and arrogant anyway. Look, I can handle it. I understand that. I'm around politicians all the time, but it's, I never dug it. And then when you dug into his charity, his Red Foundation, and the vast majority of funds he was collecting was going to administrative costs and paying people on staff, and it wasn't actually going out to charity. There's this wonderful website called Charity Navigator, and I use this for all the charity that I do, that they rate your charity in terms of a number of criteria, but the most important one is how much money is actually being spent on the cause to which you are donating. So when I donate to a group that says they're going to feed starving people in Africa, how much of that money is going to those families and not going towards the executives jet setting around and throwing galas? So that's an important thing to note, and Bono's is very poorly in that. Hillary Clinton, she deserves a big civilian honor. I mean, with the original election denier, right? I mean, did anyone more vociferously deny an election than Hillary Clinton? Even if you say Trump, I mean, she's at least a tie. The whole country acted as though she didn't lose, or half the country, in 2016. Michael J. Fox, actor, but also left-wing activist. Jane Goodall, the conservationist who did all the work with the chimps, primates, and again, had a good career in some ways, but known for left-wing activism. Magic Johnson, sort of low-hanging fruit. He's pretty legendary. What I dig about Magic Johnson is he was the best in the world at his skill, basketball, and then he went on to become a really amazing executive in the sports world, and not to mention doing all the philanthropic stuff. I just like people who have a zest for life, and I like that about Magic Johnson. Like people who that's one of the things that I love about Donald Trump so much. So that's good one. That's low-hanging fruit. Robert Francis Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Sr., posthumously, obviously. Good call by Biden there, and not expected. I mean, not unexpected. Of all the people, and when I researched Breaking Biden, I'll tell you Biden really admired a handful of people. Biden, not a dumb guy, was historically semi-literate, but wasn't some sort of an egghead who just was a vociferous consumer of history books. But he really latched on to Robert Kennedy in particular as one of his heroes and tried to model himself after him. So I think his legacy makes sense for him to get that. And again, low-hanging fruit. Someone else should have done this before. Ralph Lauren, the fashion designer, a no-brainer there. Another low-hanging fruit for Biden. Bill Nye, not a science guy. Climate change alarmist, doesn't know anything about science. And terrible. Hate Bill Nye. But thank you for all the content, Bill Nye. And I'm building up to it. George W. Romney, Mitt Romney's dad. Mitt Romney was there with an SHIT eating grin on his face. Don't like the Romneys. Denzel Washington, probably most deserving guy maybe on the list. Classic American, good choice by Biden. Anna Wintour, editor of Vogue, probably got it mostly for keeping Melania off the cover. Sorry, probably what it was. But the big one, George Soros. a guy who invests in every single anti-American cause and anti-Israel cause imaginable, a guy who has blood on his hands for the DAs that he's funded and the damage they've done to American cities. American cities have rotted because of George Soros and his chaos agenda, where he has funded pretty much every single DA that has pursued these soft on crime policies that are unpopular with the public and that have led to chaos in our streets. George Soros is behind those, among many, many other destructive things he's done during his life. And he was there. Alex Soros, who is about my age, his son, who will be taking the reins over for George Soros. We're going to have to endure these guys for another half century or more. Bad guys, left-wing people, they got their hands in every single bad thing, including some of the Trump prosecutions. So very important to note that. All right, aloha to alexmarlow.com if you want to be a part of it. Outrageous stuff from Biden. It's interesting. All right. Other stuff in Washington that I want to point out, which is, again, I don't want to get too distracted in some of the Biden distractions. We're getting good news about some of the cabinet picks. There's a report out from Jennifer Jacobs, where is she with now? She's CBS. She's very well sourced, not one of us politically, but well sourced. She says, Thune says that Trump believes Hegseth will be confirmed, could have the votes get confirmed. Good news. I predicted that. I thought everyone would come around, and I think that after the terror attack, I don't think people are going to mess around quite as much. So it's good news. We're also looking at whether or not Trump is going to be able to quickly execute some of those early priorities on his agenda. And among those priorities are immigration and tax cuts. Those seem to be the big ones. But deregulation, any sort of spending cuts that can be done, any sort of Doge that's going on, this is top priority. And we're tracking really closely here in Washington right now is that members of Congress trying to figure out, should you do one big bill or do you do a number of bills, a couple of bills, something for border security, something for the energy sector, something with tax cuts, and perhaps do a couple bites at the apple. And I'll tell you, I'm mixed on this. In general, I'm very anti-omnibus. I'm very pro we need to have individual appropriations bills. I think, 12 is the standard, something like that. We need to get back to that, where we're passing only things that are alike, things that are in the same realm, or less. I mean, I'd rather have pretty much everything there be direct accountability, audits, et cetera, for everything. The reason why is because the bigger the bill, the more crap that gets put in it, the more pork, the more handouts, the more entitlements, the more things where we got to pass it so we know what's in it type stuff. And I think that that's immoral. I think that it's bad for the country. We've done very badly. But now that we're in charge, there's a very powerful case being made that we need to do a few things at once right away to get the ball rolling. And I'm sympathetic to it. I admit on a moral level, these are the issues we got to grapple with. On a moral level, on a philosophical level, on a general level, I want as many bills as possible. But, you talk to Larry Kudlow, who's a tax cut guy, and I'm a tax cut guy. I believe in tax cuts pretty much all the time. There's not a tax out there I wouldn't want to cut, to be honest. And he says, well, if we do border first, and we might not get to tax cuts, because what if we spend a bunch of what if we spend a bunch of electoral political capital on immigration, and then we don't have any left to do tax cuts? I'm optimistic that wouldn't be the case, but I understand it. Likewise, you guys have been through this before, where we try to do something the establishment liked in Washington and not do border and immigration right away. And then we barely got around to border immigration 4 years later. This is what happened in the first Trump administration. So I understand the push to do one big bill. So some people want to do multiple bills, at least two bills. Some people want to do everything at once. I could go either way, because I'm going to win either way. Because if we do one big bill and Trump gets tax cuts and immigration right away, I think it'll go very well for him. But on a principle level, we need to get to more bills, because then there's more accountability. There's more discussion of how much we're spending and overspending. So it's big things. So that's what we're tracking. A lot more political stuff out there. I'll hold some of it. I've got some more thoughts on that, but I'll hold some of it because it was the Golden Globes, and Breitbart's original mission is that politics is a downstream of culture first. I do think it's flipped. I think the politics is upstream. And I think there's some evidence of that now from the Golden Globes. This host, her name's Nikki Glaser, who, if you guys follow comedy, you're familiar with her. She's a big name in comedy. And she really did roast Hollywood in a very great way. There were some jokes that were very biting, directed at all the people in the room at the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes is the fun one. The Oscars is typically the one that's very stuck up and full of itself. Screen Actors Guild, same way. But the Golden Globes usually fun. There's a lot of roasting going on. Ricky Gervais would host a lot. But she had a pretty great joke. She said, "I'm not here to roast you. How could I? You're all so famous, so talented, so powerful. I mean, you could really do anything except tell the country who to vote for. But it's okay. You'll get them next time." It's really good. She also made fun of how the parties would not be as cool this time because Diddy's gone. All right, so we got the Diddy joke. Let's hear the Diddy joke. This is a good one.
Oh, good. I mean, that movie was more sexually charged than Diddy's credit card. I mean, seriously. Oh, no, I know. I'm sorry. I'm upset, too. The after party's not going to be as good this year. But we have to move on. I know it. Stanley Tucci Freak-Off just doesn't have the same ring to it, but no baby oil this year, just lots of olive oil, okay?
Oh, it's so good. It's got so many layers in that because the Stanley Tucci cooks on Instagram now. Like, that's his job, basically. He acts too, but he mostly just cooks on Instagram. And he's got this very compelling delivery to it. If any of you who are Instagram chefluencer followers, I'm sure you've come across his stuff. Definitely something I do in my spare time. Judge me if you will. But that's a good joke because everyone in Hollywood was in on it, and she's going right at their face, is that you guys knew he was doing these freak-offs and probably preying on young people and certainly debasing everyone involved, and everyone just stood by and was excited about Diddy's after party. Folks, pay attention because this is as serious as it gets. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are racing to lock in radical policies before Trump takes office on January the 20th. They're not just winding down, they're cementing their control. Biden's already signed Executive Order 14067, and banks are actively testing a government-controlled digital dollar right now. This isn't about modernizing currency. It's about total control. They want to track every dollar you earn, save, and spend. Every single one. And here's the kicker. Once the system's fully implemented, it'll be nearly impossible for Trump to undo it. The radical left and their global elite allies will have permanent grips on your financial life long after they're out of power. Trump's called this a dangerous threat to freedom, and J.D. Vance warns it can mean total government control over your finances. Folks, this is real and it's happening now, but you're not powerless. My friends at Priority Gold have created a wealth preservation guide to help you fight back. It lays out 3 critical steps to shield your savings from this overreach. All you have to do is text FREEDOM to 24999 right now and get your guide. That's FREEDOM to 24999 or visit PriorityGold.com. Don't wait. Text FREEDOM to 24999 today and shield what's yours. All right, so there was one thing we were all watching in the Breitbart newsroom was what was going to happen with this creature called Carla Sophia Gascon. Carla Sophia Gascon lived as a man, I think, until his 40s and then transitioned into something that is somewhat resembling a woman and was receiving nominations all over these awards, and in particular for a female acting category for a movie called Amelia Perez, which was, I think, a musical about a trans drug dealer. I think is what it's about. And this man, who biological male, was getting nominated for all the female categories and was the favorite, the heavy favorite in this category. And we were all anticipating this was going to be the story of the night, that a man was going to win a female acting category, going to beat all the women after, they segregate the men from the women. And then 2 men are going to win in one category and no women. And I was really looking forward to that. But somehow something even better happened, which is that there was an upset and Demi Moore won. And Demi Moore won for a movie called The Substance. I'm going to play a little bit of her acceptance speech. This is a horror movie, an extreme body horror movie. I'll explain it, but let's get a taste of this because this is an unbelievable thing. Because she said she'd been acting for 45 years and had never gotten an acting award until this very moment.
30 years ago, I had a producer tell me that I was a popcorn actress. And at that time, I made that mean that this wasn't something that I was allowed to have, that I could do movies that were successful, that made a lot of money, but that I couldn't be acknowledged. And I bought in, and I believed that. And that corroded me over time to the point where I thought a few years ago that maybe this was it. Maybe I was complete. Maybe I've done what I was supposed to do. And as I was at kind of a low point, I had this magical, bold, courageous, out of the box, absolutely bonkers script come across my desk called The Substance. And the universe told me that you're not done. And I am so grateful to call.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's a great speech. It's exactly, I just found it very heartening. And I found that to be, I think about this on a personal level. I'm sure many of you in the audience can relate to this, is sometimes you wonder, what if the best is not yet to come? What if the best is in the past? What if you've done your most important work or the most important things you'll ever do, and you wait for God or the universe to speak to you and maybe show you that maybe there is more to come, and you don't know what it's going to look like. This movie, The Substance, is one of the few I've seen this year. I've not seen many movies this year because it's been as a heavy work year, but it's an unbelievable thing. If you're into horror movies, if you're into David Cronenberg type movies, you're going to love this movie. But it is so extreme. It's really more of an homage, not to just Cronenberg, but to Brian Usna and Society and some obscure stuff that's out there. There's references to a Reanimator in there, Basket Case. So those of you who are follow horror, you'll know this stuff. But this is these are deep cuts. And it's a mainstream star with her, Margaret Qualley. And basically the premise is Demi Moore is an aging Jane Fonda type character who is an actress / aerobics person. And she takes this substance to make her a younger version of herself. And it goes sideways very quickly. And it becomes this really grotesque thing about aging and about what it's like to come to grips with the passage of time. And she just does the most unbelievable job. She's incredible. I remember telling Mrs. Dr. Marlow after I watched it, I said that, I don't think she'll win awards, but she should get nominated for this stuff. It's really cool. So to see her win an upset over a man was really great. And especially for a creative, bold movie, something you're not going to see on TV, something that's entirely adult. They're all naked the whole time, which is, I'm not negative on that stuff because I feel like it's a reality of human nature that we're interested in those things. And there's a way to do it, an artistic way that's not just purely pornographic. So it's really cool, really bold swing. And I remember thinking about how much I admired her for doing something totally different than what she'd already done her whole life when she became a household name to all of us. And she beat a man, which is so great, who was the favorite. But that pleasure was short-lived because then they kept giving awards to the trans drug dealer musical, and that won like a million other awards. But that's it. That was the show. We always do the best coverage of Breitbart News, and we love to point out moments of hypocrisy, like they got extra armed protection and snipers. All these people love gun control. They all want to take your guns, but if they got a big award show, got to get the snipers out there. That's what Hollywood does. So, and let's see. Oh, more trans there. Just ridiculous amounts of trans. There was this individual who was part of Queer Eye, which was a Netflix show now, Jonathan Van Ness, who is a man who wears a dress but also a beard and has the pronouns they, he, and she. So he's just messing around with everyone, trying to troll us, getting attention, and we oblige. Breitbart gets the clicks, whatever. So that was that, but good stuff, good entertainment, and we got to have that culture at least keep an eye on where it's at, because we would love to see movies be great again, wouldn't we? Let's be realistic. All right, let's see here. We got a ton of email over the weekend. Let's get to some of the things that are out there. Here's one this is David Johnson. Do you think that this is about Thomas Massie? He's a chance to be the future nominee for president. It is my hope he will. My belief is that he is the future where the Republican Party and America should be moving. Can they? Okay, so this is with regards to Massie being the lone voice who voted against Speaker Johnson. You guys know I was not supportive of Speaker Johnson, but in the end, it became clear there was no alternative being offered up. So I sort of stood down, as we did at Breitbart, especially when Trump weighed in and said he wanted Johnson. I don't know if Massey's got presidential material. I'll tell you, there's something I like about him, something I don't like. First of all, he's an OG, the anti-establishment person, a person who's been taking on the establishment for a very long time. And I love that because you've got to have a strong rhino hide to be president. And I sometimes feel like you've got to be a little crazy this day and age, which is part of why I was always a big supporter of Matt Gaetz, even though I thought Matt Gaetz made some very bad decisions over time. I think how he spends his personal life, I think, is clearly suspect. I think ousting Kevin McCarthy clearly backfired for Gaetz. So there's some things where Gaetz is wrong, but I always will keep an eye on Gaetz because I feel like he's got that odd eye of the tiger of someone who could go all the way one day, and you never know. And you got to be semi-crazy, I think, get all the way through the gauntlet of the left-wing attacks and the attacks on your family and the attacks on your personal life. And you just have to have this ability to sustain public ridicule and embarrassment. I think Massey's got that. And I think that's a very important skill. He's also very bright. Anyone who's talked to him knows he's a smart person. And he's a forward thinker. But he does some stuff which is just off to me. I know that there was clips of him talking last week where he looked like he had just woken up after sleeping in a subway station. I should have played this footage when we had the chance. But it looked like he just hadn't shaved in a while and he couldn't sit up straight. And it wasn't presidential. And there's something that Trump does is Trump always looks presidential. He's always in a sharp suit. He's always got some sort of a uniform on. He knows how to work a room. I don't know if that's Massey. I don't know if that's him. So he might be good where he's at, but I like him. All right, continuing. Let's see. This is from Pete. Pete emails, Alex, is anyone but me a little spooked about the MAGA fan base rallying for the inauguration? Not that they shouldn't, but Trump supporters gathered en masse in D.C. in the month of January over a presidential election. Didn't we see this movie? And that was before 2 assassination attempts, a mystery drone invasion, non-terrorist terror attacks, Tren de Aragua, and rogue special forces soldiers with pipe bombs. Listen, I'd go if I could to get those VIP passes, but the risk profile is worth noting. FBI and Secret Service can't protect a cheesecake coming out of the oven, not to mention both Nancy Pelosi and Ray Epps are still on the loose, just saying. You guys email so well. I just love your emails. I gotta say, I was a little late to the recording today because I was reading everything you guys were sending me. I've always had this thought, which is, but I'm trying to distinguish between what's my own personality traits and what's a legitimate piece of analysis. On a personal level, I always find that I get more done, I have more clarity when I'm not in the middle of the fray, where I can kind of be, not to say above the fray, but to be outside of it and being able to assess the situation from afar. So I always am sensitive to, if we gather as a group, this could go bad. I love the Tea Parties, for example, but 15 years ago, but I only went to 1 or 2. I didn't need to be there. I could be very supportive spiritually, emotionally with my coverage, but I'd have to show up. Andrew wanted to go. Everyone, Andrew Breitbart, he wanted to just go. Let me talk. Give me a microphone. Let's speak. And I love to speak to a group, but I want to know ahead of time. So here's my point, is that of course, there are vulnerabilities. I don't trust that we're going to protect everyone at these events. I believe there'll be some level of violence at the inauguration. And will there be terrorism? I don't know, because I'm getting the impression that we're a softer target than we have been in previous years. The fact that we have the open border and we've imported all these people who are criminals and possible with terrorist ties, the fact that we have these enclaves that are radicalizing people at a pretty rapid rate disturbs me. So I will not say, do not gather. It's a presidential inauguration. It's historic. We earned this victory. If that's how you want to deal with it, I will not tell you not to. I will tell you it does not suit me on a personal level. That it is, at a personal level, I will celebrate privately. I don't need to be there. And I would have told all of you who are thinking of going to January 6th, don't go to January the 6th 4 years ago. And a lot of you would have either stayed out of jail, or a friend of yours would have stayed out of jail or stayed out of big trouble. So maybe some of you think of it as a point of personal pride to get harassed by the government for years on end. Not worth it to me. And I could have seen that coming. There's going to be no overturning of the election. You guys were sold a bunch of lies. If there was anything that was going to happen January the 6th other than a hangout. So, it's noteworthy. I got to say. So if you want to gather, but I understand anyone who believes that it is too dangerous right now to get out there and gather as a group of conservatives, because you could get targeted by the government or some bad actors. Lee Cole, hi, Alex. Glad to hear you back on the radio. I've been listening for a while now. I've got to talk to you a few times on Patriot Radio and really enjoy your take on things. My question is, what do you think about Trump giving maybe monthly State of the Union addresses so he can tell the American people what damage the Democrats have really done to America? I think we deserve to know a need to shame them. I should probably just edit you guys. You sound a little better if you ever have a sloppy email. Basically, he wants to hear from Trump every month. Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it. Yes, we should, at least. I'm curious what's the most productive for him. Is once a month too much? Because he gets to craft all this, do this brilliant stagecraft into the State of the Union. His State of the Unions were some of the best entertainment I've ever seen in my life. Never miss a Trump State of the Union. The fact that we get 3 or 4 more, depending on if he wants to do something this year. Typically, you don't do it in the election year, but he might do an address to joint session of Congress. We'll see what it's called. But his State of the Unions are truly terrific. And I don't know if they won't have the same impact effect if they're 12 a year, but I think he should make regular addresses. And I would love for him to do regular interviews. I want to do regular interviews with him. I'll pitch them on that. And you know what's going to happen is he'll say, yes, we'll do an interview. He'll say, let's do one once a month. And then his people will protect him and they won't allow for it to be once a month. But that's okay. That's okay. It happens. Those are the ropes. That's how it goes. I would like to hear from him more than once a year, and probably less than once a month just to keep him high impact. But I like the suggestion. All right, last one for today. Dear Alex, love the show. Longtime follower of Breitbart and you. Also become a fan of Mike Slater on Breitbart News Daily and Sirius XM. Good. Thanks for the support. I must say I agree with your overall assessment of Jimmy Carter's presidency and life after his term ended. However, we must not forget his major accomplishment, which brought us to home brewing of beer and the explosion of the craft brew business that offered high-quality beer, rescuing us from the crappy beers offered by the major breweries such as Anheuser-Busch, which has gone woke. And they're trying to come back, but they've been pretty woke. This is a great point, and I had to look this up, so thank you. You guys gave me an education. This is what I miss about not having callers, and I want to have callers soon, because you guys give me an education. I was not aware of this. I had to look this up. This is from Ted Raftus. But apparently, Jimmy Carter did deregulate, and it allowed for the craft beer boom. I noted that Carter was a deregulator. I was historically literate enough to mention that after his passing as a highlight. And I did mention that he didn't get full credit for years later because of all the other horrible things he did. And he overwhelmed all the good in his post-presidency, which more horrible stuff. But he was a deregulator, and he did deregulate in this way. And I was personally benefited from this as well. I definitely had a big craft beer moment of my life. Craft beer is one of the most unbelievable pleasures, and it's an American industry in a lot of ways. Kind of, I guess Belgium might have us by at least pound for pound, but America is the place to get great beer, and the craft brewery scene is a just delicious, fantastic, homemade American stuff. And Carter is largely to thank. It's interesting because in the spirits world, the craft brands are not as good as the major brands. The major brands just have, with their money and time, it takes a long time to make craft spirits for the most part. I guess maybe vodka is an exception. But with the craft brew, that the smaller producers, the better, it seems like in general. And no offense if you're a big producer and want to buy some ads, feel free. Feel free to buy some ads in the show. But this is an interesting history, and thanks for highlighting it, because it was definitely one of my hobbies when I was a slightly younger man than I am now. It's the craft beer. And I can thank Jimmy Carter, and we will. A positive note to sign out on. Thank you to our producer, Misty. Thanks to all of you for telling 10,000 friends and family members about the show. 5-star reviews, sharing the content. If you like the show, then tell people about it. That's all I ask. Leaving comments, all that stuff is good, helps engagement, help us move up those charts and become the biggest show in the world. We give it a couple years, but, we're building up to it on the Alex Marlow Show. Thanks to all of you. We'll talk to you tomorrow.